Welcome back. The investigation into that accidental tragic death of a Hollywood cinematographer by actor Alec Baldwin intensified over the weekend. Baldwin discharged a prop gun that left Halyna Hutchins dead and the director injured. Could Baldwin be charged, and who could be liable for her death? We are joined by legal analyst Larry Yellen this morning. Larry, good to see you this morning. What a horribly tragic story. And I want to go over with you a lot of stuff coming out this week and several pieces of information. The latest being that an assistant director handed Baldwin that loaded weapon and told him it was a cold gun, meaning it was safe to use. So who's at fault here?
Well, first of all, I don't think under the New Mexico laws that Alec Baldwin would face criminal charges. Like most states, New Mexico has an involuntary manslaughter law. That's what could apply here, but that requires extreme recklessness on the part of the individual acting. And I don't think that in this case, as the facts come out, we're going to learn that he showed any extreme reckless conduct on his part. He was handed a gun, supposedly, if the affidavits are accurate. He was handed a weapon. He was told it was a cold gun. It's not his responsibility at that point to check the chambers. He was practicing for his role in the movie. He pulled it out of his pulled it out 3 different times, and the third time apparently it discharged. He was pointing it at the camera, which apparently was what he was supposed to be doing in that scene in the movie. I don't think he showed any reckless conduct which would lead to criminal charges in New Mexico against him.
Okay, so let's talk about a few significant things that came out over the weekend. First, there are reports that several crew members walked off the set earlier in the day to protest the working conditions. Then reports have come out in the media that this assistant director, who is a veteran, has been the subject of complaints for years regarding safety protocols, and that there were 2 accidental gun discharges just days before this fatal shooting. So does that suggest the production does bear some responsibility? And interestingly enough, Larry, Baldwin happens to be a producer on the film.
And that's where he's going to be in trouble, because I think there will be a ton of lawsuits coming out of this incident. And he, as the executive producer of the film, will bear some responsibility for the individuals who set up the set, who handled the weapons, who basically created the scene which led to this tragic accident. TMZ reported, without naming its sources over the weekend, that some of the crew members had in fact been using these weapons for target practice. So after that, you have to wonder, what's the chain of custody? Who handled the weapons from the point they might have been used with loaded bullets out in the desert to where they ended up in Alec Baldwin's hand? And if that chain of custody points to certain individuals who, number one, should not have been hired by the company in the first place, then the company and Alec Baldwin as the producer would face some civil liability and possibly lawsuits for wrongful death and possible millions of dollars in damages. But also those individuals are the ones who could face some criminal liability for involuntary manslaughter if they acted recklessly. If they fired the guns in the desert, then brought them back, put them on the tray, where the assistant director then took them and gave them to Alec Baldwin, and they were reckless in not taking the bullets out of those guns, they're the ones I think who could face some criminal responsibility. But most of the litigation here, I think, will be civil lawsuits against the producers of the film, the companies behind it, and they'll try and assess blame for the accident in a civil courtroom.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Obviously, this is a horrible tragedy, and eventually somebody is going to have to pay the price, because the reality is somebody died. There she is, a picture of her. And so the question is, if the likelihood of a civil lawsuit is more likely to, in fact, be successful, what kind of monetary compensation could something like that involve? As I said, someone has died.
Right, her family would be entitled to dollar damages for her likely income in the years ahead. She apparently had a very bright future. Hutchins had an extremely good career to this point, was moving up in the industry, plus for the loss of her companionship in the years ahead. We've all seen it before. A death like this can result in a verdict of millions of dollars from a jury, or a settlement for millions of dollars. And it's much easier to win a civil lawsuit where the burden of proof is merely proving that it's more likely than not that the actor created this situation that led to the accident, as opposed to a criminal lawsuit where you have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is likely to end up in a civil courtroom with a lower burden of proof and the likelihood of of millions of dollars in damages it's pretty likely in this case.
And let's talk about something else that hopefully will be likely. Do you think any of this is going to lead to any workplace safety and hazard laws as a result?
I think it will. I mean, there will certainly be a close examination of what went wrong here. I think new rules will be put forth either in states or in the industry itself as to the handling of weapons. But on the other hand, these rules already exist in many workplaces, and all it takes is 2 or 3 sloppy crew members or individuals who don't follow the rules to create an accident like this. So although new rules may be put in place and there will be a lot of discussion about the workplace and safety situations in Hollywood sets, it doesn't mean that accidents like this won't happen again, because people get sloppy. In this case, some of the crew members had quit the scene a day or two beforehand, claiming that they were being forced to work 13-hour days and not being given the rest periods that they were entitled to. If situations like that continue and crew members are overworked, things can get sloppy, accidents will happen. You can put in all the rules in the world, but if people don't follow them, there will be tragic accidents like this.
Sadly, very true. What a horrible story. Larry, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate your perspective. Always good to see you.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
you take care. We'll be